I feel sorry for you guys showing up here this morning on a beautiful day out there. And if none of you showed up, I would leave really quickly. So I am hoping that you get something exciting and new out of this. I will tell you, I believe I found new things that I'll share with you that'll be really important. I didn't want to do this talk. I had people come in over December, January that were dealing with COVID, long haul COVID things, and they asked me if I would do this talk. It didn't fit in the schedule until now. And so I got it put in, I put off doing the slides and everything. And once I started doing it, the research into it, I think was incredible. Finding out what was really going on versus what I thought was going on is a game changer. So with that, let me get started here. First thing is, I got to give you the disclaimer. I'm not giving you medical advice, I'm giving you educational information. Seek your physician, come see me, we'll figure out what's going on. What is COVID? So COVID-19 is just another virus that is actually a SARS virus. Typically SARS viruses come from animals and leap to humans. There was a number of them that came out in China over the last couple decades. I was in China one time whenever we had a SARS outbreak there and got back and got a horrible, horrible respiratory infection that nobody could figure out. I'm pretty sure I was one of the individuals that caught it while I was there. And I was sick for probably 6 months with respiratory issues. So that was my experience back, and I guess that was about 2002, somewhere in that ballpark. It's not uncommon to come from animals. I have other theories on COVID-19 and where it came from and how it worked out, but it is a possibility. One of the things that it does specifically is, and that's probably the most important thing you're going to walk away from this whole talk, is that spike protein binds to what's called ACE2 receptors. That's something that I discovered. I am going to go in depth of what that means and how we take care of it. Very significant. The other thing that's significant is the systems that COVID-19 affects. Usually your standard flu is a respiratory problem. That's the one that we catch all the time. People they'll either get snotty nose, sore throat, or you'll get respiratory problems. COVID-19 attacks every system in your body in different ways. And the reason it does so is that ACE2 receptor. The timeline for COVID-19, basically in December of 2019, is when they first started seeing it show up. There are patients out there and doctors out there will say, hey, we started seeing this as early as November, some maybe even a little earlier than that. It's hard to know, we weren't testing. And there are a number of respiratory illnesses that come out the same way, but it's likely that we were seeing patients in that early stages and didn't know it. By March of 2020, this is when we really knew something was going wrong. I had worked in some laboratories dealing with the CDC, and one of our things that we talked about when things were going really bad was exponential growth. And in March, we had exponential growth. I was going to take a spring break vacation with my kids and go to Italy. And we'd had everything planned. It happened to be the first and only time I ever paid for travel insurance. And it was a blessing. I've been blessed a number of times in life, and that was a big one. We were signed up to go. My wife was in New York finishing up some business. And all of a sudden in Italy, they had one patient with COVID. Then the next day, it was 3. Then it was 9. Then it was 27. And it happened just that fast. And that was exponential growth. I called my wife and I said, hey, get on a plane and get home. She goes, I have meetings this afternoon. I said, no, go get on a plane, come home. This is exponential growth. We don't know what's going to happen. I was one of the crazy people that went to Costco, I went to Home Depot, I went to Harbor Freight, I bought all the N95 masks, I bought a truckload of toilet paper, I bought plastic and duct tape. I went and filled up every gas can I owned and had it in the garage. And so this was before anybody else did it. So I had enough toilet paper for all my neighbors and everybody around when time came. So that March was really the time that changed everything whenever we saw the exponential growth. As time went on, we saw this developing and actually changing what it did and the way it did things with the variants. This is significant. We get variant changes in flus and colds all the time. The way this was able to change rapidly kind of lends us to thinking it was more of a lab-grown infection. Yes, things change and they evolve, but not usually as rapidly as we saw it in COVID-19. So I think that's one of the ways we say we saw differences here. There are some very specific proteins in COVID-19 that allow you to manipulate them to make it change. And that is one of the reasons why I think it was probably lab grown. Globally, 700 plus million people were confirmed. Most people didn't get tested. So you can say that was probably the tip of the iceberg of people who actually had it. These were just confirmed cases. I would say the number is 3, 4 to 5 times higher than that 700 million people that got it. At this time, now looking out this far out, if you haven't gotten it, I'd be really shocked. I'd say everybody's gotten it. Some people don't react to it, and we'll see that on a different slide. 7 million people died from it. That number is kind of interesting too. There were people who reported dying from it so that hospitals and funeral homes and different entities could make money off of it. But probably in the end, now that we're looking out, the number is probably accurate. People died from it who weren't counted. People who were counted didn't have it. So that's kind of a bogus number, but probably accurate. Up to 40% developed long-haul COVID. I would have thought that number was accurate too until I did the research for this. That number is probably not even close to being right. That number is probably double of what it is. Probably 80% of people are walking around with some symptoms of long-haul COVID, and you just think I'm getting older, or yeah, it's just the way it is, or this is my condition. There's a lot more people having problems than we thought. And then 1 out of 10 people, even 12 months later, are having problems. That number's probably low too. That number's probably up to 5 or 6 out of 10. So, who got it most? The elderly did. There's some reasons for that, and we'll get into that when we talk about the ACE2 receptor site. Those ACE2 receptor sites tend to decline as we get older. So if COVID's attacking them, you have less of them to do their job, so that's one of the reasons. Pre-existing diabetes and obesity. We saw this across the board. If you had type 2 diabetes and you were also obese, your likelihood of having long-term symptoms are extenuated. The other thing is too, you per volume of your body when you're obese, you have less of that ACE2 per volume of your body. So again, ACE2 plays a reason why obesity is a problem there. Individuals with cardiovascular disease, and I'll explain that, why that's there too. A compromised immune system. This is always one that I have a problem with the way it's publicized, the way it's put on Facebook, other doctors talk about. Individuals with compromised immune systems, they take it as anybody who has something going on in their immune system. I see compromised being more people who have a lower immune system. HIV patients, people on medications, cyclosporin for transplants, people who are on long-term steroid use, corticosteroid use. Individuals who have autoimmune diseases are often thrown in and lumped into this. And we ought to have a different term for them because what happens is we treat them both the same. The person who has an immune system who's lower and not working correctly, or a person who has an immune system that is higher and not working correctly, shouldn't be lumped in together. They're two totally different things. Genetic susceptibility. There are a number of genes out there that make individuals more susceptible to inflammation. The IL-6, the IL-10 genes, if you have those and they're not correct, your chances of having immune situations that are flared are probably 10 to 100 times more than individuals who don't have those genes. So that's significant, and that's one of the things when we do genetic testing in our office or we do a review of genes, those are two of the genes that we look for to see if you're going to have a problem. If so, we know we have to do some things up front, more vitamin D, more omega-3s to keep your immune system in check with those genes. Women were affected 2 times more than men. Interesting enough, women's immune systems don't work the same as men's. You have a switch that is flipped when you have babies. That is so you don't kill the baby. Unfortunately, when you flip that switch off so you don't kill the baby, when you flip the switch back on, your immune systems don't come back out to level land where they were before. Sometimes they come out lower and you get sick with everybody that sneezes or coughs around you, or it comes out higher and you have autoimmune problems. Individuals are blessed when they can have babies and their immune system does work out right. That's the truth. I've had patients who've had one baby, they come in and they have allergies, they have every cold that passes by, they go and have their second baby and they have no problems, they go and have the third baby and now they have autoimmune problems. So it is interesting, and that's why women have the changes there. Middle-aged adults, which sounds really interesting, why middle-aged adults would have more long-haul COVID. And the reason is, a lot of times their immune systems are actually heightened at that age. And so you have a really strong immune system. It's actually, you've lost your thalamus now, so the education part of your immune system is not there. You have a really strong immune system with very little education, or able to get more education. So when you throw in COVID on this and we start having issues, your body tends to react differently than little kids do and older adults do. Multiple acute symptoms. So individuals that have obesity, have heart disease, have other autoimmune problems tend to have more long-haul COVID. And then anybody who has any kind of autoimmune disease, from type 1 diabetes to thyroid conditions to rheumatoid arthritis, is going to see this. And the reason is, again, that ACE2 receptor site. And then the HLA genetic variants. These are genes that, even as we see it, we see a lot of individuals will have sensitivities to foods, to dairy, to eggs, to especially gluten, when they have these HLA gene variants. Those sensitivities already put your immune system in a heightened state. So some of the unique things about COVID, when I mentioned earlier that individuals, the number was probably higher of the individuals who had COVID, we look at this and it had a silent spread to it. 40 to 45% of people who got COVID never realized they had it. You didn't feel bad, you kept going, and it worked out that you passed it off to everybody else around you and you felt great. So maybe you were tired today and you just thought, well, I worked too hard, or yeah, I'm getting older. But that silent spread, it makes it very unique. Most colds, you have symptoms. You have something that says you had it. In this case, almost 50% of people didn't know they had it. The target in this is extremely rare. That ACE2 receptor site only happens in other SARS or COVID variants. So we don't see this in regular respiratory pneumonias. We don't see it in the flu, emphysema. So it's very unique. And I'm going to dive into that. You're going to be nauseated from ACE2 by the time I get done, but I think it's the most important thing on today. Immune evasion. So COVID is made up of 19 different proteins. 16 of those proteins were made that your immune system couldn't detect it. So it was almost made that way that your body couldn't even tell it existed. That's a rare number for viruses. When we see viruses, usually there's some non-detection proteins of 4, 5, 6. When we're looking at 16, that's an overabundance of things for you not to be able to detect it. So that's kind of rare, and also maybe lends to it being made instead of it being happening naturally. And then the lingering damage. When we look at the virus itself, the one thing that everybody keeps talking about is the spike protein, spike protein, spike protein. It is not broken down easily. It tends to stay in your body, it tends to stick to things, it tends to hide out in numerous places. Even in the bones in your brain, they find it that it harbors inside of those bones, or around your brain, in your skull. The key here, again, I said you're gonna probably start hearing this in your head when you sleep at nighttime, but ACE2, and this is an angiotensin converting enzyme 2. And that's big words. That's probably the only time you need to know that. ACE2, it is your master regulatory enzyme in your body. It controls so many things. When you go and look it up in years past and what we were taught in school and as we came through in all my degrees, is that ACE2's job was to lower blood pressure. Your kidneys make renin, which becomes angiotensin 1, which then becomes angiotensin 2, makes your blood pressure go up. ACE2 breaks that down so that your blood pressure drops. And that's pretty much what everybody knows ACE2 does in the medical world. Well, the truth is blood pressure is probably one of the big things, but it is actually one of the leading things in your body that takes down your immune system and doesn't allow it to overreact to things. So we can see right now, if COVID is attacking this ACE2, your ability to take down inflammation plummets. So all your inflammatory effects come out because of that. The gut barrier, ACE2 is extremely, extremely important in how your gut works and the gut barrier to keep proteins from getting into the bloodstream to getting outside of your gut. And then hormone balance. So if you look at that right now, and we look at the patients that come in my door, we could say almost every patient that comes in fits into one or multiple of these categories. Yep, we're having blood pressure issues, we're having inflammatory issues, we're having gut issues, we're having hormone issues. I would also say probably the one that's left off here, and we'll get to it, is more of brain fog, more of anxiety, depression, all the emotional issues that come with it too. So that's significant. When it comes to ACE2, I think the one thing that individuals are starting to learn here recently, as I look through the research, almost all the research has been in the last year on ACE2. So when we think about COVID now, we're out 6 years out from COVID. They're just now starting to figure out that this is the problem. And I kind of found it out a roundabout way. I started asking questions of, okay, what's COVID really doing? What's it affecting in the body? And that's how I found this. So ACE2, what it does naturally, it converts hormones. So it allows hormones to be taken from the state of just floating around your body to where it activates them and allows them to be used. So you have a lot of individuals now that are getting hormone therapy, and whenever they're doing that, they're boosting up their hormones. It doesn't matter if you can't break down the old ones and get rid of them, and if you can't use what you have. So we have to get to that point. It basically controls your blood pressure again through that angiotensin 1 to 2 to the conversion to getting rid of it. It actually protects our blood vessels. So this is something we saw in COVID, that individuals were having a lot of inflammatory issues inside their blood vessels, causing stroke, causing clots, that kind of thing. It's because it naturally protects the inside of the blood vessels, your ACE2 does. And then your biggest thing it does is anti-inflammatory. It takes down those reactions when you're overreacting to things. The respiratory system, lung tissues. It protects the inside of the lung. So when we saw everybody getting fluid on their lungs, when we saw people having long-term respiratory issues after COVID, it's because ACE2 actually protects the lungs. And once you take it out, there is no protection of what's going on in the lungs anymore. Fluid balance, so we see people that now have swelling in their hands and things like that from a lymph standpoint. It doesn't allow your lymph to move correctly when you have it. And then also it reduces inflammatory damage in the lungs. I know of at least 10 patients that I see that have permanent damage in the lungs. We take x-rays, we can see the scarring in there, and it's because ACE2 was depleted. And then oxygen exchange between oxygen and carbon dioxide. ACE2 has some controlling mechanisms in how well you can breathe out, get out the CO2, and how well you bring in the oxygen. So significant from the cardiovascular and the respiratory side. The gut. I actually find this probably the most fascinating, and I spent probably the most time going down a rabbit hole on how ACE2 in your gut is important. I wrote a book, Eat to Restore, and a lot of the foods that we're having problems with, there are inflammatory reactions to those foods. But this could be part of why we're seeing exponential rates of food sensitivities in our gut. ACE2, it's one of its main things it does in the gut is it transports tryptophan inside the cells. It turns on a mechanism called BOAT1. So on the outside of the cell, you have your ACE2 receptor. On the inside, you have BOAT1. Tryptophan touches that ACE2 receptor on the outside. It kind of flips it over and takes it inside. And inside the cell, tryptophan becomes a product called IPA. IPA is what makes your gut lining stick together. It doesn't just fall apart. And so it makes tight junctions. It holds it together. So when you start having a problem with ACE2, basically you can't take and put tryptophan inside the cell. You don't get IPA. And now your gut becomes permeable. And I always kind of laugh about this. Back 10, 15 years ago when I was getting my master's in nutrition, we would talk about leaky gut, leaky gut. And the medical world would say, there is no such thing as leaky gut. Stuff doesn't pass through the gut. Well, then they started coming out with some products and some pharmaceuticals, and now they call it increased permeability. It doesn't matter what you call it, your gut's leaking. And so this is one of the big things that is happening. There are some other situations in our world that take down ACE2, and I'll get to those. But when we start seeing all the COVID ACE2 dropping, we start seeing leaky gut, we start seeing IBS, we start seeing constipation, we start seeing food sensitivities. The gut is directly tied to the brain, the gut-brain connection. So now then we start seeing more anxiety, we start seeing more depression, we start seeing all the things going on in society now, and it could all be based on this ACE2 interaction there. So barrier in the gut gets broken down. Cell renewal. So intestinal stem cells depend on this ACE2 reacting correctly so that they can make more healthy cells. When ACE2 is not working right, your gut starts aging rather rapidly. And then mucus production. You have to have ACE2 to have mucus being produced in the gut. Mucus in the gut is extremely important. It makes the gut lining live. It basically gives it the soil for all your good bacteria to grow in there so that you have the right microbiome in your gut. The pancreas. The pancreas is where insulin is made. When the pancreas is not working correctly, you end up with diabetes. You can't process sugar correctly, and we start having some problems there. We have currently in our office, we have a number of diabetics that are eating correctly, doing things right, their genes are right, and I've been struggling to figure out why they have a problem. Yep, we're treating them correctly, we're getting them better, but why did they ever have the problem and I couldn't figure it out? This is probably why we're seeing this now, and we weren't seeing it a decade ago. I'll still go back and say the average person now is eating 150 pounds of sugar a year. We're supposed to eat 5 to 10 as our max. That's what our bodies are designed to work with. So we definitely expect to see more diabetics with the way we're eating. But those individuals who are doing everything right and we're still seeing it, this is probably the cause when we have ACE2 not working correctly. Our beta cells are the cells inside of our pancreas that make the insulin. They are extremely susceptible to a breakdown of the ACE2 receptor. So insulin secretion then is not able to regulate the way it should be. Glucose control falls apart. And then our tissue sensitivity. That ACE2 is kind of like the iceberg on the outside of the cell that basically rolls over and brings things into it. It's the gatekeeper for our cells. It's also the one that decides what inflammation is good, what inflammation is bad. Whenever we start to see ACE2 break down and we start to see a blood sugar problem, it tends to let more sugar in the cells than it should. Where this comes into effect is we have individuals who I would call a cellular diabetic. We basically run what's called a HOMA score. You do a fast for 9 to 11 hours. We do your blood sugar. We also do your fasting insulin. We do calculations, and we can tell whether your body is cranking the sugar inside those cells. If you get too much sugar inside your cells, you may go to a regular doctor and they'll say, oh, you're doing wonderful. Your blood sugar levels are normal. Well, you're tired, you're fatigued, you're gaining weight. We come in, run the HOMA score, we do some other tests, and we say, you're actually a cellular diabetic. We got to start watching what you're putting in your body, cutting back the sugar. And I think we're seeing more cellular diabetics now because of long haul COVID. I got to take a drink, otherwise I'm going to be croaking here in a minute. The brain and nervous system. So I was having a discussion beforehand with an individual about possible meningitis, viral meningitis post-COVID, and it's most likely an ACE2 issue. The brain and our liver are probably the two places in our body that use the most energy and have the most effect with ACE2. They take in a lot of sugar, they take in a lot of nutrients, and when we start having an ACE2 problem, we're not regulating those cells in their energy intake and output like we should. So we are going to have a problem. ACE2 is neuroprotective. So basically when we're looking at inflammation in the brain, when we're looking at other chemicals passing over, it becomes a situation. The blood-brain barrier. What is in your body is very much protected from getting into your brain. Your brain is your most fragile part of your body, and it has double wrapping around it to make sure things don't get in. The things we want in, we want in. The things we want out, we want out. When you have an ACE2 or long-haul COVID situation, that protection barrier starts to break down. Much like the gut barrier was breaking down and letting food particles out, this is letting in proteins that it should be. It's letting out good nutrients that it should be holding in. The cognitive functions, you'll start to see problems where you can't think as clear, where you start having brain fog. And that's probably, I don't know if I ever heard the words brain fog before 2020, before COVID actually happened. I just don't remember it ever being a thing. It's now mentioned probably to me on a multiple times a day basis. Hey, I have brain fog. I have brain fog. It's actually, I think, even on our intake form now. You check off a box, yes, I have brain fog. Mood regulation. It does control mood regulation from a neurological standpoint, but again, also from the gut standpoint. So if you take both ACE2 having problems in the brain and in the gut, you compound that. If you especially look at our younger population coming up and the number of them that are on medication, some of it's because they're being pushed that way, some of it's because they're bad diet, other ones it's because it's a COVID situation piling up. It's probably actually a threshold of multiple reasons why we're having a problem. You also begin to see in elderly that this comes along faster. As you get older, your ACE2 receptors don't work as good as they did. You have fewer than what you had when you were younger. And now you throw this COVID on top of it, and we're seeing people having mental decline faster than what they did when we were younger. Kidneys. So kidneys are actually one of the major control mechanisms for your blood pressure. Most people may not know that, but basically your blood pressure is controlled from your kidneys and your lungs and the way they interact. They basically measure your amount of fluids, they measure your amount of pressure, and through the renin, which comes from your kidneys, angiotensin in the lungs, angiotensin 2, and ACE2, that is the circle that's drawn in med school to show you what's going on in your blood pressure. And each one of those medications hits that in a different place to work for you. So when we have an ACE2 problem in the kidneys, you're most likely going to have a blood pressure problem. It's going to be there. Fluid balance begins to have a problem. You will notice that even taking in more salt when you're having an ACE2 problem, your blood pressure is more sensitive to salt than it was before. If you didn't have an ACE2 problem, you may have a sensitivity, but it's really heightened with an ACE2 issue. Toxic filtration. So the kidneys support that toxic filtration. So most of the toxins, you either poop them out or pee them out. You sweat out a little bit, but urine is a major player in getting rid of toxins. ACE2 keeps the kidneys from having inflammation as those toxins pass through. If you don't have ACE2 working properly, you all of a sudden start to have kidney inflammation. And we see that. If you look at numbers on people's estimated glomerular filtration rate before COVID and after COVID, there's a distinct drop in kidney function after COVID. And that's why. And then mineral balance. We have a harder time getting minerals now than we ever did before. It's every so many decades they come in and they do studies on vegetables to see how much minerals content is in vegetables. And compare 1950s to now, we hardly get any mineral content in what we're taking. That's why everybody's taking minerals and vitamins and everything now. And some people say, well, I just eat what God made. Well, that'd be great if we still had the amount of minerals in it that we did when we were kids. You take magnesium. We used to get magnesium from potatoes. We get it from our root tubers and that kind of thing. We've planted the same crops in the same field for decades now, and everybody will go out and put phosphorus in, they'll put nitrites in, maybe even iron, but nobody goes out and puts magnesium back in the soil. Nobody goes out and puts manganese back in the soil. And so that mineral balance, if we're losing them now faster than we ever did before and we're not putting them in, we see more people with mineral issues than ever before. So when we look at ACE2, it's everywhere in the body. The lungs, the heart, the blood vessels, the gut, pancreas, kidneys, brain, reproductive system. I would even say bones, because I know there's some studies in here that show that our bones harbor the spike protein and it causes significant damage to the bones. So what happens, why is COVID destroying ACE2? So one of the things that COVID does is when it comes up, the spike protein in particular, when it sticks to ACE2, ACE2 gets basically shut down. It thinks that it is supposed to pull whatever it is inside the cell. So spike protein hits this ACE2 and it flips over, kind of like that iceberg. Once it is pulled inside the cell, it can no longer function to take down inflammation. It can no longer read the environment around it. And so that is one of the things that COVID does. It basically floats along, touches it, flips it over, it makes it a mute point. So that's significant right there. The next thing that it does is it triggers an enzyme called ADAM17. And what ADAM17 does is ADAM17 cuts off that ACE2 from the outside of the cell. So here the cell has all this ACE2 on the outside that's regulating the cell, what gets in, what gets out, how inflammation dictates to it. Atom 17 comes in, cuts it off, and now it floats away, and your body takes the liver and breaks it down. It's no longer usable. So that's an interesting thing that COVID-19 does specifically. And then direct destabilization. So whenever this spike hits it and binds to it, it basically just sticks to it like glue. So one of the interesting things that happens is you go and get the vaccine. The vaccine causes a spike protein. You create it yourself, actually. You create the spike protein, it's floating around you, it's now sticking to all these ACE2s. So you've just put something in your body that's actually lending to the problem that we had to begin with. So it's nice because we can make an antibody against that spike protein, but in the meantime, if we don't have a good immune system, our immune system is ignoring the signal, you've just put more poison in your body. So in the wrong person, the vaccine is worse than actually not having it by far. In the right person, it may have helped out some, but that's a gamble. So yeah, the vaccine, what about it? The vaccine, interesting thing about the vaccine, when it first came out, I had a number of patients working with Pfizer Monsanto in St. Louis, and I had to have good discussions with them, and not Monsanto, who made the vaccine? Moderna. And so I was able to go back and see how they basically made it, how they shipped it to Kalamazoo, Michigan, how they shipped it back down to St. Louis, all the steps of the process of it. And I made a Facebook post and put it out on YouTube. And it was nothing in there bad. I wasn't against the vaccine. I wasn't for the vaccine. I was just saying how it was made. And I got shut down really quickly from Facebook and YouTube. And there was nothing in there that wasn't scientific. The same thing happened about a month later. I did a report online on face masks, N95 face masks, and how to put them on properly, how they were sealed up. And we were taught that when we went through school, because I did part of my time in a lab that did some CDC type stuff. And you had to have it on properly, it had to be fitted, and when we walked out at the end of the day, if you didn't have a mark all the way around your face, you were in trouble. And so I basically just put up the same things I learned, and they took me down again and said, if you ever put up anything else, you'll be offline for the rest of your life. And so I said, okay, it's not that important. So when I did that study on the spike protein, I came through and it basically did a second paper on how that spike protein worked, how the mRNA worked, and how it comes into your cell, basically makes your cells put a spike protein on the outside. First of all, if your immune system is healthy, it says that cell's infected. And it comes in and breaks down that cell, and now that spike protein is floating around in your system, hoping that your body then attacks the spike protein and makes the antibodies. That would happen in the perfect scenario if you isolated out and said, what were they trying to do? They were trying to make your cell produce a spike protein. The spike protein then would interact with your immune system. You would make an antibody. That antibody is like a flag that says, this is the bad guy. Then your body attacks it and kills it. In the perfect world, that's the way it worked out. We're not perfect. Our immune system, each person is different. We have multiple levels of our immune system and they attack different ways. Unfortunately, with the spike protein, a lot of times we didn't actually break it down. We killed it, we took it off the cell, but we let it float around. What happens then is it begins to stick to that ACE2 receptor site. If we're lucky and we're healthy, we have enough ACE2 to go around, we feel bad for 4 or 5 months, and it goes on its way. Some individuals aren't that lucky. They don't come back from that. Most people recover normally. Some experience long haul patterns. The same restoration applies. Whether you are getting the vaccine, whether you have COVID, the answer is still the same. We have to support ACE2, and that's what we do in this situation. So the cascade. There was a typical cascade, especially in long haul COVID individuals. When they got sick, they had inflammation in their blood vessels. Some people had clotting, some people had some strokes, but almost everybody had some inflammation in the blood vessel. Pretty much everybody had some microclots. These would be like little miniature strokes. Most of them weren't big enough to be noticed, but sometimes maybe you had some brain fog, you had muscle fatigue, you had a harder time breathing, felt like somebody was sitting on your chest. Those were situations there. In situations, especially in middle-aged males that were working out really hard, especially ones that were on testosterone who were building more muscle mass, they would actually have extensive muscle damage to their hearts. We also saw this in little kids that were vaccinated or who were doing high-level sports. We would see that they had cardiovascular damage from it too. POTS, we saw POTS more in young women who, I'd say young women and older women, who have a mineral deficiency and their body couldn't keep up with the demand. So they would be lightheaded, or they'd get up in a change of position and they'd feel weak and like they were going to pass out. That was kind of a normal thing there. And then across the board, we've seen hypertension go up. And I think a lot of times in the medical world, we say, oh, well, this is aging, or this is obesity, or this is a diabetic type problem. But we see it in healthy people too. In general, blood pressure has gone up across the board of everybody that comes in. And I'd say unless you have thyroid conditions, some situations like that, everybody else has raised significantly. And then we've seen the increased risk of stroke and heart attack, and that's both been with just straight COVID and with vaccines out there. So that's significant. Heart palpitations is one of the things that I would say 10 years ago, we didn't have too many people check that box on their chart, and now we see it more commonly than we ever did before. The racing heart, the chest pain, I would say we get less chest pain in and more just tightness. People complain about being tight all over, and that's partially because there's a lot of ACE2 receptor sites in all of your muscles. But that chest tightness, when you come in, one of the things we do, if you walk in my office and you say you have chest tightness, even on a regular office visit, we run an EKG or an ECG to make sure that we're not having a heart attack or anything. I think that's something that every time you walk in to a doctor's office, if you say, I have tight chest or I have some chest pain, do it. You know, my doctorate is in chiropractic, and on one of my tests one time, I had a radiologist was presenting a test, and the question was, if somebody comes into your office and they have a tight chest or pain in their chest, what do you do? And my answer was, you do an EKG or an ECG. I got the question wrong. It was basically, he says, no, you'd adjust the ribs to see if it feels better. And I went to him afterwards and I said, that's not what I would do. I said, I would do this. And we got in a pretty good fight about it. We're good friends now. He's an older gentleman, but we got in a pretty good fight about it. And he finally said, he says, I'm now arguing with you enough, you're right, but I'm not going to give you the question right. I have to change it for everybody else. And so we still do that in our class all the time. We are in our clinic, we do the ECG, EKG, because I think it's important. And we have saved probably 3 to 4 people's lives with it. They were having a heart attack, and we sent them on to the hospital. So that's important. The cold hands, that's another one that I didn't used to see as much as now. That's probably a pretty common thing. You go to the medical world and they'll say, oh, you have Raynaud's syndrome. Oh, you have Raynaud's. My next question would be for them, okay, what are we going to do about it? They don't have an answer. We need to increase blood flow to those extremities, and we do that. And then shortness of breath, even at rest, you'll find individuals who are just, and you'll talk to them, that's kind of something more common now too. Metabolic system. So we talked about how our pancreas is important with insulin and that. We are having more type 2 diabetics, and yes, we are eating more sugar than ever before. You know, back in the 70s and 80s, they came in and told us to take fat out of everything. We have fat-free, 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 fat-free. Well, what they did instead is they put sugar, 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 and they don't call it sugar. It has 61 names to it now, sugar does, when they put it in things. So that's part of our problem. Then you add COVID on top of it, and we see what's happened in the last 6 years of diabetes, what we've seen with obesity. This could be one of our big reasons, is this ACE2 is not working correctly. We're not producing, we may even be producing enough insulin. It's not the quality of insulin. And then the outside of your cells are not able to use it correctly because we don't have the ACE2 that we had before. So, and then once you throw in the sugar, you start having insulin problems, then you start having more inflammatory problems. It's a downhill slide. The gut. So when ACE2, again, I'm gonna beat this like a dead horse. When ACE2 is a problem, you're gonna have leaky gut. You're gonna have food sensitivities. You're gonna start making antibodies against it. Once you make antibodies, especially against gluten, dairy, and eggs, most all the other food sensitivities, they pretty well go away. If you take it out for a while, take it out for 6, 9 months to a year, you can pretty well bring them back. Those three, you can't bring them back. And I am working really hard to figure out how to fix that. If I can, I'll be a billionaire overnight if I can fix this. Gluten. Once you make that antibody, remember, antibody is a flag that sticks on it that says this is a bad guy. Once you create a gluten antibody, you begin to also attack your brain and your thyroid. And I would say we see more people with thyroid problems now than ever before. And a lot of times it's an underlying problem. But when we get those thyroid antibodies in, we see them show up, TPO antibody, thyroglobulin antibody, we always say run a food sensitivity. And when we do, a lot of times we'll begin to see either a gluten, egg, or we'll see a dairy sensitivity on there. And you take it out, and all of a sudden those antibodies drop, and you begin to feel better. And I have been looking for the answer of why this has happened so drastically since 2020. And I believe it's because COVID attacked that ACE2, and now we have that leaky gut, and that's causing our issues there. The dairy, dairy attacks lung tissue. If you have a dairy sensitivity, you're going to have a lung problem. If you have somebody who has asthma, you have somebody who has chronic sinusitis over and over and over and over again, if you ask them, almost all the time, they are really heavy dairy eaters. And it's kind of this interesting phenomenon that happens. You tend to have an antibody against dairy, it attacks the lungs too. Well, every time you eat dairy, you have this big immune reaction inside. Your brain is kind of funny. It doesn't know what is a good reaction or a bad reaction. It gets endorphins the same way. It's kind of like driving down the highway and there's a car wreck. Most everybody's going to slow down and look. I mean, it just happens. You do it. Same thing happens when you have an antibody to something. You're going to crave it. So if you come in and you have a thyroid issue and we run the test, you'll come back in and say, well, doctor, I don't care what it is as long as I don't have to give up my sourdough bread. Well, it's because you're addicted to it, because every time you eat it, your immune system makes an antibody, it attacks the thyroid, and your brain gets excited unbeknownst to you. And your brain will say, hey, go eat some more of that bread. That looks pretty good. Same thing happens with people who have a lung problem. They may be sitting there going, I can't breathe. Give me some more cheese. I need some more cheese. And it just perpetuates it. So, and then eggs are kind of an interesting one too. Eggs, when you have an egg sensitivity, it actually attacks your gut lining. So that happened, the egg sensitivity usually happens because you have stuff pouring through your leaky gut. Then you get an egg sensitivity, you crave eggs, you're now popping more holes in it, and all of a sudden you end up with a whole variety of other food sensitivities. So it's significant. I'd say this is probably one of the leading causes of modern food sensitivities, along with our food that we have a problem with. The brain. So probably the two biggest, maybe three biggest issues we see all the time checked on the boxes is individuals come in and sleep disturbance. And that's a big one. This plays a bigger role in women just because of the way hormones play out, just the way our bodies are made. But then that brain fog is probably number two. Memory problems are there. And then I would say in our younger people and our older people, that anxiety, depression has become a real thing. Some of the other ones in here, headaches and migraines, I would say most of those come back to mineral deficiencies that we're getting because we're not able to digest stuff and we're not putting it in properly. Autonomic dysfunction. So there are individuals now popping up that weren't there before COVID that'll come in and say, I can just be walking along in the middle of the day and all of a sudden I'm hot feeling, like I'm on fire. Or I can be middle of the day, all of a sudden I'm freezing, or middle of the night, same way. In the nighttime, we always think, okay, it's menopausal situations. But all of a sudden we're seeing it in guys that we never saw before. It's popping up, they're like, yeah, I can wake up and I'm on fire. And that's autonomic. Basically, your brain is just not reading the signals correctly anymore. And that's partially because that spike is crossing that blood-brain barrier. Mitochondria. I know a number of you have been to my other talks, and I talk a lot about lymphatics, mitochondria, and that. Mitochondria are your powerhouses. They're what makes the energy that every cell uses. That's what you're taught in school. That's what you're taught everywhere out there. In general, mitochondria actually play a bigger role in sensing what's going on inside the cell. They sense inflammation, they sense danger, they make energy, they figure out how much toxin's there. And to begin with, they send out signals to other cells, telling other cells what's going on in this cell. So they all have an idea what's going on with the environment. Once the mitochondria gets too sick, what it does is it sends a signal to that cell and also the ones adjoining it, shut down, we've been invaded. We want to close the gates. Well, what happens once it closes the gates, that cell no longer functions. Whether it's your liver cell, whether it's the thyroid cell, whether it's a muscular cell, it begins to have those problems. When that happens, we start getting the situation where you get exhausted whenever you've done any kind of effort. And if you've had COVID, most everybody experienced that. All of a sudden, you were just as tired as could be, and you didn't know why. Maybe you get some rest, you get up again, you do something, just as tired as could be. That's because that mitochondria was taking a hit from this. Muscle weakness, with that amyloid deposits. Amyloid is a protein that is kind of it's a byproduct. And normally our body is able to clean it up and get rid of it, especially in the brain. This is one of the ones that we look at when we're talking about Alzheimer's. People get these amyloid plaques. Whenever you start having this cascade of mitochondrial issues, you will see those amyloid plaquing. So when we see that on an Alzheimer's patients, I look at it as a mitochondrial situation, and what are we going to do about it that way? Exercise tolerance, you just can't do what you could do before. It's not always you're getting older. I tend to tell the story when I talk about exercise tolerance. I had a dear friend that passed away at 94. And I asked him one time at 87 years old after hiking across the mountain, I said, boy, I would have loved to have seen you at 55. And he goes, no, you wouldn't have. He says, at 55, I had 5-time bypass surgery. I had to have part of my colon removed. I had to have my hips replaced. I had to have a finger removed because of cancer. And he says, I was dying. I said, well, what made the difference? He says, my doctor told me I was going to die in the next 5 years if I didn't do something. He says, I cleaned up my diet. I started exercising. And he says, I can do more now at 87 than I ever could when I was 55. So exercise tolerance is something we can change. It's important. And if you don't, we can't fix ACE2, and I'll get to that in a little bit. You just don't recover as well. That autonomic dysfunction and temperature sensitivity go hand in hand with one another. And then heart rate spikes. We now have the ability to watch what goes on with our heart rate with watches and things. And what's very interesting is you want your heart rate to go up at certain activities and you want it to drop. What we find post-COVID is that individuals will get heart rate spikes out of nowhere. All of a sudden, you'll get the racing heart, it drops too low, it goes up. We start getting some of the POTS syndrome. And that's because those ACE2 receptors are bringing in nutrients or not bringing in nutrients when they should. So they're not regulating the outside of that cell. The immune system. So we start getting mimicry. Mimicry is basically, you can just say, we get confused about who the good guy is and who the bad guy is. And so our immune system, when that spike protein starts sticking to that ACE2 on the outside of the cell, it flips it off, flips it in, cuts it off, changes it. We now don't know what's a real signal and what's a wrong signal. I would say it's kind of like looking at Facebook nowadays. You don't know what's real anymore. You don't know, well, did the president really say that? Did that really happen here? Oh, I saw a clip from Yellowstone, a bear doing something. Well, you find out those 50 bears laying out on the highway, that wasn't a real thing, but my mom called and said, hey, did you see there was 50 black bears sitting out on the highway in Yellowstone? That's the same thing that's going on with the spike protein. When it's touching on your cells, it's basically giving you really confusing stuff, and you begin to start to attack yourself. Some other things that happen here, two famous examples. One of them is a thromboprotein. This is the one that causes clots. It gets confused because it actually thinks you're bleeding out. And so that signal says you're bleeding out, let's make some clots. So we start throwing these little microclots and they can become big ones. We can have strokes from it. The next one is the one that basically tells us that we're having a heart attack and we need to either build up more tissue in our heart, so people will get a thickened heart or enlarged heart from it. These are just two classic cases of what long-haul COVID is doing into our system. Individuals have more likelihood of having the autoimmune diseases. And like I said, we're definitely seeing more Hashimoto's thyroiditis than we'd ever seen in our life. That's where you start making an antibody against your thyroid. That one has two different leads to it. One of them, we have more food sensitivities, which cross-react and make you create that. The other one is our bodies can't tell certain functions from others. And so we get that. Rheumatoid arthritis, I am almost positive, but I can't prove it yet. I still think most rheumatoid arthritis, there's a part of it that is a little bit due to genetics. Mom or dad had it and that kind of thing. But I think a large component of this is how we utilize minerals in our body. It's kind of interesting that when you have rheumatoid arthritis, you tend to have problem in joints right at where the joints come together and the bones begin to deteriorate. Those are the places in your body where you have the most iron. Women have rheumatoid arthritis a lot more than men do. Women tend to be more anemic than men do. And so when we see that, I believe we're breaking down the joints to actually pull the iron out of it, is what we're doing. And so there's no such thing as being a little anemic. It's like being a little pregnant. You're not just a little pregnant, you're pregnant. When you're anemic, you're more than that. Get it figured out, get out of anemia. That way you don't end up with rheumatoid arthritis or some of the other joint issues there. The inflammatory bowel disease, well, we already know the gut's being attacked by long haul COVID, so that makes a difference there. Type 1 diabetes is when your pancreas, your beta cells stop producing. We can see a direct correlation with that. Why would you have that if you're having long haul COVID? Vasculitis. So we're talking about the Raynaud syndrome and the fact that you can't feel your hands because they get cold or they're turning blue. This is the vasculitis. And then MS and neurological flares. So right now I probably have 6 to 10 patients that have been diagnosed with MS, but not the traditional way that you would. When you basically diagnose an MS patient, usually you're looking at MRIs, you're seeing basically the myelin sheath around the nerves breaking down and that kind of thing. The individuals we're seeing now don't have that. And I wouldn't call it MS-like, that's what the term the medical world's using. I would call it pseudo-MS, which means fake MS. And we're seeing it more than we ever did before. It has to be because these ACE2 receptors are being broken down. And our gut-brain barrier is being broken down too, allowing things in that shouldn't be in. Okay. So again, there's a number of names for it right now. In fact, I think Autumn, when we were doing this, I was calling it, I think I was calling it long haul COVID, or I was calling it a different name, and she says, no, now it's just been shortened to long haul. Oh, I have long haul. When I first started doing this talk, I didn't think there would be enough material. Now I'm worried about getting it done in time. But one of the things I was going to do is I was going to call it long haul, and I was going to put in Epstein-Barr virus. I was going to put in Lyme's disease. I was going to put in COVID, lump it all in, because I really thought they all had the same origin. They kind of worked the same way. As soon as I discovered the ACE2 and found out this is the underlying problem, I went back and tried to see if that was the same with the other Epstein-Barr and those, and it's not. It's unique. So that's why long haul, stuck with long haul COVID. Again, that 40%, up to 40% of people develop long haul COVID. I think it, like I said, it could be 80, it could be plus that. Because when we start looking at the diabetes situation, we start looking at the brain fog, we start looking at anxiety, depression, we start looking at the food sensitivities, the gut issues. If we can trace it back to this, it would show that that's the real deal. So many individuals that come in and we talk about long haul COVID, most of them are concerned that the virus is still in them. Most individuals, that's not the case. It is a possibility. Some individuals will harbor viruses. Viruses can live for a long time. Most likely, if you still had the virus in you, symptoms wouldn't be as much as a long haul COVID situation as acute COVID situations. You would still having upper respiratory problems, you would have major heart problems. And so for the most part, I don't believe individuals have a persistent long haul COVID situation where it's growing inside them. It's possible, but most of those people are going to have to be immunosuppressed to be in that situation. The spike protein can stay active for 12 or plus months in individuals. That doesn't mean that you're growing that virus though. So that's significant to know. That spike protein can be there, and I would venture to say individuals that had multiple vaccines, this number could be even farther. You've basically created a situation where you're making the spike protein. And there was no real regulation to see how long you made it and how you made it. They were doing this vaccine off of other studies. They didn't have time to come in and actually do it, test it. So they looked at all these studies out here and said, well, this RNA should only make spike protein for 2 months or for a week or so. They didn't test it properly. So it could very easily, spike proteins could still be made. It doesn't mean the virus is inside you. Antigen persistence. So we talked about an antibody. That's the flag that says this is a bad guy. What the antibody sticks to is an antigen. The antigen is the bad guy. So we're having antigen persistence. So even fragments of that spike protein. It doesn't have to be that whole spike protein. You know, the whole virus is made of 9 proteins. A combination of 2 or 3 proteins together that still look like the spike protein can still be setting off this whole cascade. And so some individuals have really good immune systems, have really good liver processing, and they can come in and they can clean out the bad guy really quickly. When we do genetics on individuals, some of them don't clean out byproducts at all. So those individuals will be more likely to have this pattern 2. And then pattern 3, whenever we get to pattern 3, it's when your body basically gets on fire. You know, at first it sees the spike protein and it attacks it. Well, remember that spike protein turns that ACE2 inside where it can't turn down the volume or turn down the inflammation. That's probably most people in long haul COVID, they're probably in pattern 3. We've kind of went past the 12 months now. We've gotten past the point where we've cleaned up all the debris in there. Our body's recycled it, reused it, or got rid of it. And so now we're in the point that our immune system, it just doesn't know how to shut down. And we'll get to what we're going to do about that. So the spike protein, when we talk about that 12 months plus on that phase, on the first one, it can hide in certain places. Gut tissue, biopsies out to 4 months plus, we've seen the spike protein hiding in gut tissues. So again, causing leaky gut, causing IBS, causing those kind of things. Lymphoid tissue. So when we're looking at things like the tonsils, the adenoids, those are lymph nodes. We go in, they've removed them from individuals, and they've tested them, and it's persisted in there for months and months inside that. We haven't had the checks on lymph nodes themselves. Usually you just don't go removing as many lymph nodes as you do tonsils and that, so the study hasn't been done. Plus, whenever you remove a lymph node, you're typically looking for cancer, so they haven't come back and checked it for spike proteins. But I would venture to say if it's in the tonsils and adenoids, it's going to be in the lymph nodes longer than that. They kind of serve the same purpose in our bodies. The brain. So in the brain, we've seen these spike proteins hide in there for past 4 years now. We're 6 years out and we're seeing it hide in the brain. Interesting enough, the brain has a blood-brain barrier, which really protects things from getting in, but it also protects things from getting out. So once the spike protein gets in there, we can see that they stay in there. This is probably part of the leading cause of dementia, of brain fog, and that is that we still have issues there. I'm currently working on a supplement formula to help clean out that spike protein out of the brain, a glymphatic formula. So it's in the process, but it's not here yet. And I think that'll do well for helping with brain fog and helping support the blood-brain barrier. And at nighttime when we sleep, if about 2 hours in you go into a nice REM sleep, and your glymphatic fluid, which is like your lymphatic fluid of your brain, gets cleaned out. Your brain actually shrinks up to 60%. So while you're sleeping there, and the fluid gets squished out of it, and you recycle the fluid and you clean it up. Individuals who don't sleep good don't clean out their brain, and you can even see individuals that go on Ambient, things like that, they don't drop into that sleep pattern. So they don't clean out their brain. And so you'll see after a year or so of using some of the sleep aids, you will find out that person, you'll do something today, you'll go to them and you'll talk about what you did the next day, and they won't remember any of the details, because when that brain shrinks and the fluid comes out, it actually stores all the information you did that day like a hard drive being updated. And so if you don't have good sleep, you're going to have some memory problems. So sleep is important. The skull bones and the marrow around that, they have actually been found to be a long-term reservoir for spike proteins. It just kind of gets in there and sets in there. I would have to say probably the people with the brain issue, with the brain storage and the skull, probably one and the same, because it's fluctuating that fluid in and out of there. And then blood vessel linings. When we look at plaquing, atherosclerosis in the arteries, that is a buildup of things that shouldn't be there. And if we have the spike protein basically sticking inside those arteries, right now we're not able to control blood pressure, we're not able to relax blood vessels, but then we start having cholesterol stick to them. That cholesterol, it actually has a real job to do there. It's not just coming and sticking for no reason, it's coming in to try to protect your body from bad things. So if that spike protein is sticking in there, your body recognizes it, we're going to see more atherosclerosis there. And then circulating immune cells, monocytes. Monocytes are our first line of defense. They're the ones that when you get an infection, they're the first ones there to say, what's going on? Let me kill the bad guy. Are you a good guy, bad guy? Well, unfortunately, out of all of our white blood cells, the monocytes tend to hold spike proteins longer and more than other ones do. That means they don't have the energy to do their job. They also may be reading the signals wrong from when they get to a job site, so they can attack yourself. And in particular, they tend to attack blood vessel linings faster than they do other things. That's where most of the time, if you're going to catch a virus, if you're going to catch a bad bug and it gets into your bloodstream, it's going to lay up against the blood vessels. And so that's circulating looking for that bad guy. If it can't figure out who the bad guy and the good guy is, it starts to attack yourself. So that's significant. Common symptoms: fatigue, brain fog, post-exercise exhaustion, anxiety, depression, hormone issues, chronic inflammation, breathing, heart problems, food sensitivities, and this is one we're seeing a lot right now. And then sleep disturbance. Either you're wired up, you're sleeping, you're not getting refreshed in a time. You go to most of the doctors out in the world right now, they're going to put you on an anti-anxiety medication, they're going to put you on antidepressant medication. The big clinics out in the world, the ones that people have always gone to in the past to figure out what's the matter, I'd say their name, but I'll get in trouble because this will be out online. So the major one everybody goes to, Minneapolis, places like that, more people are being diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and sent home with medication for that instead of taking care of the underlying problems. So they come in, yeah, I'm having brain fog, I'm having fatigue, I'm just tired and everything. They work them up and don't figure out that it's actually an ACE2 problem and say, well, we didn't find anything. Here's some medication for anxiety. A month later, you're having depression, so they put you on one for depression. Now you're just null inside. That's a typical way to go. So it's not in your head. These are real things. Again, the reason it's persisting is because it causes a situation where you can't monitor what's going on in your body anymore. Your body can't fight off things. It can't see what's good and bad. You're on fire inside. Your mitochondria are disturbed, and you have issues there. This is one that I get asked all the time, so I think there's 2 or 3 slides in here. What about ivermectin? So, first of all, I can't prescribe. I'm not a prescribing physician. It's not one of my degrees. But ivermectin has its place. We give out over 300 million doses as a country every year to third world countries. Use it mainly for parasites is what we use it for. Ivermectin basically slows down cell division is what it does. So your cells normally replicate, make new cells. There are certain things that replicate much faster than others. Parasites replicate extremely fast. Viruses replicate extremely fast. And so cancers replicate extremely fast. There's a couple areas in your body that also replicate really fast. Your brain and your liver. And so when we give out ivermectin to other countries, we basically give out a 12 milligram dose once a month. They come by, you get them a 12 milligram dose and they take it, and side effects are very minimal at that dose. Unfortunately, when we started having COVID outbreak, we had individuals that decided they were going to take ivermectin at superhuman doses. Some at horse doses, some people were taking 2 or 3 doses a day of 12 milligrams, which is triple of what you'd normally get in a day. You're getting triple in a day, which you'd normally get once a month. At that point, we start seeing major side effects. Is there a time and place for ivermectin, even with viral infections? Yes. Ivermectin can help you get over a cold faster. It can slow down the progress of that. What I had happen, though, was when COVID outbreak happened, we had individuals start taking ivermectin every day. Ivermectin slows down cellular replication. So when you start looking at it, those individuals within a month or 2 started getting pretty bad brain fog. Their brain wasn't replicating the size or the speed it was. And I had some professors taking it who basically ended up having to quit their jobs because they couldn't think anymore. So ivermectin needs to be prescribed. It needs to be taken the right way. There are companies and there are online companies that can help you get it. For long haul COVID, the principles probably aren't there for long haul COVID, truthfully. Like we looked at, the vast majority of people are not having persistent viral infection. They're actually dealing with the aftermath of the ACE2. If you were having persistent, your symptoms would be more acute, like the individuals going to the hospital, more acute like when you had it. It's not this lingering effects. So in my world, I wouldn't recommend it for anybody who is having long haul COVID. Anybody who has COVID, then talk with your physician about doing ivermectin and see how it works for you. No drug out there right now is probably the answer. You can take medications that help you feel good. Yeah, you can go take Advil, you can take aspirin, you can load up on caffeine. There's things that you're doing that are going to treat symptoms. But right now, there is no medication for long haul COVID. Some individuals have the persistent virus. Yeah, you can take ivermectin. There's some other antivirals that you can do. That's going to help out some there, but it's really not going to take care of long haul COVID. The spike protein, it's embedded in cells. It's floating around our bodies. We don't know how long it's going to take to get rid of it, but there's damage being caused in the meantime. The microclots, it's being caused by the spike protein. So yeah, you can go on a blood thinner, you can go on it, it's going to take care of the microclots, but it's not going to take care of the long haul COVID. The mitochondrial damage, cells can't make energy when you have this. There's no medication just directly out there that fixes it. It's going to be a series of things you have to do. The immune dysregulation, it's stuck in fight or flight. It's just fighting everything that comes along. And then the microbiome disruption. So we're looking at everybody that's getting the gut barrier is being broke down, and so now their body is attacking their own bacteria in their gut, the good healthy ones. That slime layer is disappearing off the gut. You have problems. There's no one medication that takes care of all 6 of these at the same time. It just doesn't happen. This is something, if you've been to my talk since December, I talk about quite a bit. I've spent a lot of time working on it. When we talk about restoring health, there's really a triad that has to be addressed. I call it MILA because it's the mitochondrial situation that is broken down. Your body can't tell when it needs energy, when it needs to fight, when it needs to stop fighting. The immune system is now thrown in hyperdrive, and I'd say a lot of it has to do with COVID now that I'm researching COVID. There's a lot of individuals that are eating poorly that it's causing this situation. A lot of individuals are hyping up their immune system, taking supplements and things because we were told during COVID, oh, you need to keep your immune system strong. The truth is, probably more people caused long-haul COVID by heightening their immune system during COVID than actually regulating their immune system. Most of the things that people were throwing in, astragalus and those, were to build up the immune system. The zinc they were throwing in, they thought they were helping themselves. And the truth is, you were overhyping your immune system, which then causes more antibody response, and you are fighting it. In actuality, probably all of us, if we would have went and took higher dose omega-3 vitamins, we probably would have did more for ourselves during COVID than anything else. Omega-3s tend to make T regulatory cells. T regulatory cells are the ones that examine the situation and calm down the immune system. They're the ones that say, hey, you're overreacting, bring it down, guys. They're kind of your barkeep at the bar, keeping everybody calm, making sure nobody's fighting. And their main thing that they have to have is omega-3s. I will say this, in Wyoming, we don't get very many omega-3s. We don't eat a lot of fish like they do on the coast, and so in some ways we can have a problem. I also say people that come to my practice, a lot of them are doing a lot of omega-3 supplementation that is plant-based. They're doing flaxseed supplements, they're doing things like that. What we're finding out when we do genetic reviews on individuals, a lot of them can't actually take the omega-3s from plant-based and turn it into omega-3s that you can use. So you may have somebody that has a lot of omega-3s in them, but it's unusable because of what they're using. And then the lymphatics. The lymphatics is probably the stepsister of systems in the medical world. Almost nobody recognizes the lymphatic system for what it does. The lymphatic system drains fluid off your extremities, drains fluid around your intestines, moves fats away from the intestines, takes it to the liver to be processed. But its main job is actually surveillance. It actually pulls in pieces of debris from all your tissues in your body, and it takes it to lymph nodes in your groin, around your intestines, in your armpits and that. And basically, it analyzes it. Inside your lymph nodes, you have your macrophages there, you have your monocytes there, you have your T helper cells. These are all kind of white blood cells that are your defense mechanism. And if you've ever seen a recycling place where you have people sitting there and they're grabbing things off and throwing it behind them as it comes through, that's much of what's happening inside of your lymphatic system. These white blood cells are picking and looking at things and saying, oh, no, that's a good guy. Okay. Oh, that's a bad guy. Okay, everybody, look. This is a bad guy. I found the bad guy. We need to attack it. Okay, yep, good guy, oh, bad guy. And that's what the lymphatic system's doing. When the lymphatic system starts getting congested, basically, as stuff comes through, instead of that guy being able to see everything laid out nice on the conveyor belt is stacked up real high. He can't see the components in that conveyor belt. So he's just saying, well, maybe I find one bad guy, but 50 of them pass by in front of me. So the lymphatic system is extremely, extremely crucial in this system. I laid it out because mitochondria is where we start to really see symptoms. The immune system is what's causing the mitochondrial system problem, and the lymphatics is what's causing the immune system. So you lay it out as myela, but we treat it in reverse order. The myela system, the chain reaction, this is what I kind of just went over. You get an infection, the immune system gets stuck on, the lymphatic system gets congested, and then basically the immune system, I should have a fourth one here, but it didn't fit on the slide. The immune system overreacts and the mitochondria fail. So these three systems break down and recovery stops. This is across the board. In every single illness that we have, it's the same scenario. Long haul COVID is unique because of its attack on ACE2 and how ACE2 comes in and hits every single one of those. Hits the immune system, hits the lymphatic system, hits the mitochondria. That is unique. So we don't necessarily have to have it in this order because it's attacking all three of them at the same time. So why standard treatments fail? They're treating symptoms usually. That's the answer. They're treating symptoms. They treat fatigue. So they come in and they try to rev you up. They give you medications. If you look out there online, people are now suggesting that we take nicotine. Nicotine vasodilates those blood vessels. It gets more blood flow to the areas. But the truth is you're moving more spike protein, you're moving more ingredients around. You feel really good for probably a month, maybe 2 months, if you're lucky 3 months, and then you crash even harder than what you did before. They're suppressing the immune system. At first it sounds like a really good thing. The immune system's on fire. You don't want to suppress the immune system. You want to regulate the immune system. The drugs we have out online right now that you see, if you watch any movie now, they'll show you people eating ice cream cones and talking about a drug for immune system, for psoriasis and for IBS and things like that. The interesting thing is they come in and they affect one part of the immune system. And there's several parts of it, but maybe they affect the Th1, which is T helper cell 1, and you will feel really good for a month or two. But in the meantime, another T helper cell says, hey, we're being suppressed, let's come up. So then you have a T helper 2 or T helper cell 2, and it gets heightened. Now you have a whole other cascade of inflammatory issues go on. So we have to be careful about suppressing the immune system. We need to regulate the immune system. You want an immune system that knows good guys from bad guys. You don't want to suppress it where the bad guys get in. So most of the immune suppressants that we see out there, you will see a whole big old warning of, yeah, you're more likely to have urinary tract infections. Watch out if your prostate has a problem. Watch out if you have lymph node swelling. That's because suppressing the immune system is a temporary fix. It's a Band-Aid. You still, if somebody is suppressing your immune system from something, you ought to still be looking for the underlying process. You'll have individuals that they're suppressing your immune system and you think, well, that's great. My skin looks good. I feel better. But if they didn't address the underlying problem, you're setting yourself up for a hard fall in the future time. So do the immunosuppressant if you have to get through a bad time period, but start looking for the underlying problem. That's where that masking of symptoms comes in. If you mask symptoms, you won't clear that lymphatic system, you won't clear the damage that's going on, and it's going to only get worse in the future. Restore those 3 systems and we don't have a problem anymore. The process I've been working on, and I've promised people I'd be done by May. We're getting closer. It's May. I'm not there yet. I've written a book on this too that'll be coming out hopefully in August or so. But the first thing that you have to do when you have, whether it's any disease, but whether it's long haul COVID or not, is you really want to do some testing. You want to make sure that it's long haul COVID. In this area, one of the main underlying issues we have with individuals is a lack of vitamin D. That is probably, I would say if we do 100 vitamin D here, we probably have 80% are low on vitamin D. Vitamin D is one of the regulatory things that you put in your body. It helps your immune system know what's good and what's bad. Without proper vitamin D, we have a problem. Local clinics, local hospitals have what's normal vitamin D levels are skewed. We have so many people with low vitamin D, and you wouldn't think so. We have sun here, a lot of sun actually. I think 280 some days of sun a year. The problem is nobody's going out and getting sun on their skin. We're not wearing bikinis, we're not out there. Almost everybody's wearing long sleeve shirts, they're wearing hats, they're wearing sunglasses, and so maybe your ears show a little bit, your face shows a little bit, your hands, but that's not enough to get vitamin D in. And so getting your vitamin D levels revealed and see what they are is significant. You don't want to go too high on vitamin D. So some people will walk out here today and they'll start taking triple dose of vitamin D. If you get above 100 on your vitamin D levels, a lot of times what you'll see is bone mass starts breaking down. Important for ladies in particular, even guys as you age, you don't want to lose bone mass, you don't want to break a hip and things, so get it tested. The other one, a test that we do for individuals, it's not a cheap test, I think it's almost $800 or so, somewhere in that ballpark, is called an FMV test. It's one that I get ran at Christmas time to see what's going on in my world. But that FMV test, when we run it, it tells us all of your vitamins, what level they're at, your minerals, what level they're at. It also tells us your omega vitamins, your omega 3s, 6, 7s, 9s, what they're at and what ratios they're at. It also tells us your amino acids. If you remember, I talked about ACE2 having a problem with taking tryptophan in. It's one of the few tests that we can do, and if we see tryptophan high, we know that it's not getting into the cells, and we know that this is likely an ACE2 situation. The value in that FMV test, though, is the person reading it. You can get it, and I even have people have done it to other doctors, and they bring it to me, and they're like, yeah, I got this test, but they didn't know what it meant. That test is one that is a good test to run. And once every 4 or 5 years, you at least know where your nutrients stand and what's going on there. Omega 3s are probably one of the most significant. And omega 3s, I would say everybody needs more omega 3s. The only problem with omega 3s, if you get too high a dose, you start to bruise. I had an accountant one time, we went to see him, and the guy was black and blue all over. And I think I asked him something like, well, is your wife beating you or something? He goes, no. And finally I said, are you on blood thinners? He said, no. I said, well, are you taking something? He goes, no. I said, you're not taking fish oil or anything? Oh yeah, I'm taking fish oil. He was taking 6 big capsules of fish oil a day. And he says, well, that's what my wife told me I had to do. And so anyway, I said, well, cut it back to 1 and see what happens. Anyway, next time we saw him, he wasn't black and blue. He hadn't been beat up, is what it looked like. And so when you take fish oil, that's actually your indicator that you're getting too much. If you start bruising easy, you got to back down on it. But that's one of the things you can do to start helping this out is taking fish oil. So the reveal phase stage is really just figuring out what's going on with you, making sure it is long haul COVID, not something else. Sometimes it's as simple as being a mineral deficiency. Sometimes it's a vitamin deficiency. Sometimes you're actually having problems with other things, food sensitivities and things. The next phase is the eliminate phase. If you want to get over long haul COVID, it's going to be a situation where one magic thing is not going to take care of it. It's a threshold of things that build up over time that we got to come back and clean up. And removing toxins out of your world and opening up drainage is important. We tend to give lymph-2 matrix is our drainage formula that we like to use. Dr. Cass invented that and does a wonderful job helping open it up. So we talked about that conveyor belt going through and too much stuff on it. It makes that conveyor belt so it's flowing easier, it's not clogged up. So we use lymph-2 matrix here a lot for drainage. If individuals, we see a lot of toxin buildup or we think they have a major spike protein situation, we put them on a binder too here. And I think I'll go into each one of these more. I have slides for each one of these, so let me do that. So first is reveal, eliminate. Then we need to strengthen the balance of our immune system. We're not trying to heighten our immune system so it's high. We're not taking it down. We want to strengthen that balance of our immune system. Then we want to come in and we want to help our mitochondria get energy. It's significant if you don't do it in this order, and that's what most of the medical world's doing. It's most of what everybody's doing online. In fact, you can go online right now and there will be tons and tons of posts on boosting your mitochondria. Your mitochondria make your energy, and that's what they're boosting. They're boosting the energy process of the mitochondria. Remember, that was one of their smaller parts of it, was that we need to get it to regulate and then boost energy. So that's significant. After we get those stages cleaned up, now we can come in and optimize. Hey, we can get you sleeping better. We can get your brain thinking better. We can get your hormone balance. And then we find if we do those stages, we can start to repair old damages. Yeah, you have that shoulder that's just not quite working right. We got scar tissue in there. Now we can start healing up that. Your body will do everything to survive first before it worries about the little shoulder pain and it worries about those things. So we can get people out to the repair stage and start getting rid of some arthritis and things that we had. Are we going to help it if you fell off the horse and you broke your back and you have pain from that? No. Can we help it so the muscles around it work better and all that? Yeah. And then the E, basically simply sustaining what you've done in the past. That reveal phase, that's where we talk about looking at inflammatory markers in here, looking at those organic acids, that's found on the FMV test. We look for insulin resistance. This is one that we've done a lot more in the last year than I did before. I talked about that fasting insulin and I talked about that calculation, that's called the HOMA score. If you go to your physician and you're looking at doing that, there are some very specific things that have to be done with that test. It has to be a 9 to 11 hour fast. If you go out past 11 hours, you're going to start throwing triglycerides and your body will actually start turning those into sugar so that number gets off. If you're below 9 hours of fasting, basically you still have sugar left over from what you ate last. So that's a 9 to 11 hour fast. We do the calculations and then knowing what it means is significant. Those food sensitivities, autoimmune panels, more important now than ever in the past. The heart rate variability, a lot of individuals will come in, they have their watches on, that kind of stuff, and I'll look at that data for them and say, yeah, here's what's going on with heart rate stuff. The microclot indicators, if I have individuals in and they seem like they're throwing strokes or they'll have a situation where their hands get real hot, real cold, like really fast, so not typical Raynaud's, we start looking at that microclot things. We do the D-dimer fibrinogen. And then the comprehensive nutritional and metabolic assessments. Those tests are done through the FMV. There's a couple other tests we do, especially if people have been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and really it came back inconclusive. So the rheumatologist comes back in and says, yeah, you have an autoimmune disease, but we don't know what it is. We run a lymphocytic map test. That's a fairly expensive test, probably in the $600 range, $700 range, but it goes through each component of your immune system and figures out what's on fire, and we can figure out where we're at and what's going on. So the testing is not cheap. I also say that's why the medical world doesn't do it, because two things, they don't know how to read it. Second of all, they wouldn't know what to do if they got it back in. And third, it's expensive and insurance won't pay for it. So that's the problem. But if you want the underlying cause, that's where you spend your money on. Better than going online and signing up for a subscription of 5 supplements that are going to come in and you don't know what they're going to do for you. Get it targeted down. That elimination phase. So when we have elimination, a lot of people come in to see me and they'll say, hey, what detox do I do? And that's always a frightening thing. I've told other stories in other talks about detoxes gone wrong. Most of the time, if you want to get rid of toxins out of your body, it's not a quick fix. We're talking about 8 weeks or so. And what you want to do is you want to get the lymphatics moving. We use different formulas, but that lymph-2 matrix is the one that we like most. And so it starts to get the lymph clearing out of there. The matrix starts to break down. So that matrix is the gum in there. So we start to break down the gum inside there, and then we get rid of the old stagnation out of there. Liver detox pathways. So a lot of people will want to do a liver cleanse. That's probably the number one thing. People will want to do a liver cleanse or a colon cleanse. If your lymphatic system is not working ahead of time, you're usually going to have adverse effects from that. You're going to feel bad. You're not going to get the response you want. You tend to open up channels and get stuff moving, but it can't get out of your body. And so it tends to just move debris from one place to another. So we try to get the lymphatics moving, then we'll try to get the liver cleaned out. Some of the things that you can do right off the bat is remove inflammatory foods. I wrote Eat to Restore. I go into the toxic 9, I think it's on the next slide that I'll show you. Try to eliminate the environmental toxins. If you're somebody who's spray painting stuff every day, if you're out doing welding over things, if you're using Roundup, pesticides, clean up your world. Use a mask on those situations. Get the N95, do it right. Get a ventilation system in your building or wherever you're doing it at. And then heavy metals and molds. Molds, if you would have asked me back 15, 20 years ago if mold was a real problem, I'd probably told you no. There were houses that I went into when we were remodeling houses, and I would scrape it all up and take it out and wouldn't worry one thing about it. And now I've seen people very sick from it. We've had individuals with heavy metal toxicity that had been 20 or 30 years seeing doctors and didn't know why they had brain fog, didn't know why their muscles hurt, didn't know why they were fatigued. We basically found out they had heavy metals, and we were able to clean it out. These are the toxic 9. And like I said, this is in the book. I lay out in the book why each one of these is bad. But sugar in all forms, even your artificial forms, if you're doing stevia and stuff, are going to cause you problems. Your body thinks you're putting in real sugar. Your body was designed to have 5, at max 10 pounds a year. People are eating 150 pounds of sugar a year now on average. Our wheat is not what it used to be. What we're eating now should be a different species. It has 42 chromosomes when it used to have 14. The lectin content went from 5% to 65%. That's a big deal. Corn has been hybridized with a lactobacillus bacteria inside of it that creates a poison that kills bacteria. So they can keep it longer, it lasts longer, you can put it on the store shelves without a problem. Unfortunately, it kills out our gut bacteria, takes down the mucous membrane, and causes leaky gut. Major problem with our food sensitivities now. Soy, I say all forms here. That probably should have said all forms except for fermented. The rest of the world, when they use soy, they ferment it. And even when we look at the blue zones, they use a lot of soy, but it's fermented soy. Fermented soy takes down the phytoestrogens out of it. It takes away the toxins out of it. We are using soy in almost every flour you could ever imagine. You go to the store and look at a piece of bread, and there's soy in there, soy flour in there. We use it as a thickening agent, and it's unhealthy for us. Dairy. Unfortunately, dairy is not what it used to be too, and we probably only have about 5, when we look at people's genetics, after about age 6 or 8, only about 5% of people can actually break down dairy in the casein that's in it properly. So once we start reacting to it, we have issues there. Peanuts, when we were kids, nobody had a peanut sensitivity. Now you can't have a peanut on the bus without some kid going in anaphylactic shock. You can't have it in a classroom. Mainly due to aflatoxins, which is mold toxins. They grow the peanuts in the same field all the time. They have a toxin that is building up in there that basically is being transferred to the peanuts, and people are having problems with peanuts. You may say, no, I'm not. I will guarantee you, if you take peanuts out of your diet, you usually lose weight. If you want to gain weight, put peanuts in your diet. Put peanut butter in there, and you'll swell. If I had a kid who was going to come in to me for a wrestling tournament and said, hey, I want to gain weight, I'd say, well, go eat a scoop full of peanut butter every day and you'll gain weight for your wrestling thing. Don't do it. It's not the right idea. Seed oils. Seed oils, the outside of our cells are made of oil. Basically made of a lipid, which is fat, which is an oil. And when you put in seed oils, you start having a problem there. If you're having an ACE2 problem already, it's been flipped over, it's having problems communicating inside outside the cell, the more seed oils you put in, the more long haul COVID you're going to have. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be a problem. Alcohol is actually a class 1 carcinogen. It is actually right there with cigarettes. And so if you're going to put alcohol in, you're going to have problems, especially with long haul COVID. It disrupts the cellular membrane and causes problems. And then your artificial colors, food sweeteners. This is a good place to start. If you have long haul COVID, start here. Start cleaning up here. This is significant. Like I said, buy the book. It'll walk you through what you eat, how much you eat, and how to take care of it. That's a great place to start. We have the S, strengthening the immune system. We're strengthening it through regulation. So we're trying to rebalance the immune system. We use a couple things, which is interesting. That the IG immune, that one tends to stick to spike proteins. That's one we use in our office if we think you have a spike protein problem. It is kind of a flag to the flag is what it is. So it sticks to the whole conglomerate and your body gets rid of it. It works out pretty good. RI Balance is an anti-inflammatory one. We do have some turmeric, we have some other things in there that takes down the inflammation. It kind of starts to regulate out what's going on there. Individuals, a lot of times when they have a spike protein problem, they are diagnosed by functional medicine doctors as having mast cell syndrome. You will see that across the board, and that's one of the situations I have with individuals that come in. Most of the time they have a long haul COVID, and then they see online symptoms for mast cell syndrome, and they will go down that pathway. It'll help out some, but usually temporarily. So that histamine can help out certain individuals that have that mast cell issues, and we can stabilize it that way. ACE2 restoration, again, taking care of that histamine reaction. But CoQ10, we make the biggest amount of it when we're 20 years old. Now, we have found probably 1 out of every 5 people, so 20%, have a gene where they only make half as much as everybody else does. Those people would probably have more long-haul COVID problems than others. But CoQ10 is one that your body makes from cholesterol. So if you're on a statin drug, you're already down. If you are an individual who is very active, you need more CoQ10 than others. You make the vast majority of it by the time you're 20. By the time you're 70, you almost make none of it. That's one of the aging things that we see. So if you want just a good insurance policy for longevity, CoQ10 is it. It also helps out with long-haul COVID. If you're specifically having blood vessel issues, you've started having plaquing since then, some people even notice pain in their carotid artery. They'll say, yeah, I just tend to hurt right here. That's inflammation inside your arteries. And arterisol is one of those products that we use. Arterisol is not cheap. I think it's like $80 to $90 a bottle. But it's one of those ones where I've had some situations in the past, I'll take it for a short time period, especially after COVID I did. And then vitamin D3, K2, that's optimizing the way your immune system balances out. The one thing I didn't have on here, I think I may have it on later, is your omega-3s. Omega-3s, if I don't have it in here, I really messed up. It should be there as helping you regulate what's going on. Good omega-3s are important. A lot of individuals, especially if you look at cheap omegas, they're rancid. So they basically get a 55-gallon drum of fish oil from the foundry, and then they take in the capsule and everything. Those are the ones that you're usually going to have a burp and you start tasting fish oil, or you'll pee and you'll smell fish oil. That's usually rancid fish oil. It needs to be capsulated almost as soon as they have the fish oil. They need to capsulate it. The second thing that ought to happen with fish oil is all fish oil ought to be tested for mercury. The fish oil itself has a lot of mercury in it, and if it's not being tested for mercury, that's it. We have a good one at our office that we use that's both capsulated immediately and is tested for mercury. Third thing on omegas is if you have high blood sugar and you go and throw in a regular fish oil, it's going to make your blood sugar go up. You're going to have more problems. It's probably going to raise it 20 or 30 points because most fish oils are made with triglycerides. And when you say triglycerides, you may say fatty acids, or fatty sugars is what you'd want to say, because that's what a triglyceride is. If you have a diabetic, you're always going to see the triglycerides higher because that's sugar fastened to fat and the way it works in the body. We have, for those individuals, we do what we call IR omega, which means insulin resistant omega. It doesn't have triglycerides in it. So be careful if you're a diabetic or you have high blood sugar, don't just go get a regular fish oil, get one that's designed for you. The turbocharge. This is where probably 90% of people with long-haul COVID make a big mistake. They are tired. They just want something to get through the day. And so you go hype up on everything you can find, nicotine, kava, caffeine, and then you're taking all these things to boost your immune system. And this is what most functional medicine doctors are doing right now because they know it sells. Hey, your problem is a mitochondrial issue. Go out and take my product and you'll have more energy. And you will for about 2 weeks to 2 months, and then it drops off. You cannot come in and turbocharge things until you've cleaned up the system. You have to come in, clean up the lymphatic system, get the liver working. Then you come in, you get the immune system balanced. Remember, the mitochondria are the sensing agent inside your cell. If you come in and you start to boost the mitochondria and they're seeing the fire going on around you, you just made them stronger and more active, so they say, hey, we have a fire. Remember, one of the things they do, they send out a signal. It's called a cellular danger response. They send out that signal and they tell your body there's a problem. Well, if your immune system is here and your mitochondria down here, they're just floating around, they don't have much energy, and you say, well, I need more energy, and you boost it up to here, it's going to take that immune system and send it through the roof. And so now you felt good because you boosted this up. 2 months later, your long haul COVID symptom, every one of them is going to be 10 times worse. And so that mitochondria situation is a problem. When we do get to that phase, we do some things to help it produce more energy. The ATP is the energy there. We make sure and we give you CoQ10. We also come in and maybe give you creatine if we're having a muscle energy. Creatine is one of those ones that you see marketed out there right now. If you're going to a gym and you have a trainer, they're probably telling you to take creatine. Creatine is really good about producing energy. It also tends to swell you up. So if our lymphatic system is not moving and you put in creatine, you're basically going to end up swelling even more. You're going to gain weight. And that's what we see constantly. Most people right now, their immune systems are on fire. Their mitochondria aren't working correctly. You throw in creatine and they have swelling with it. And then essential amino acids. We talked about tryptophan. That's an amino acid, and it has to be inside the gut lining. And the problem with throwing in tryptophan when the system is not working right, it causes what's called serotonin syndrome. Serotonin syndrome is a major anxiety issue, heart palpitations, brain feels like it explode. That also happens with other things like methylene blue. You've probably seen where they're advertising on Facebook, methylene blue, and people are taking that. They feel really good for about 2 weeks to a month, and then they crash out. It's because they're doing this phase in the wrong order. You have to get it taken care of before that. The one exception on here that I tend to put people on early if I see this problem is glutathione. And there are a lot of different glutathiones out there, and a lot of individuals will say, well, you need to have liposomal glutathione. Liposomal tend to help things get in the cells real easy. The problem is when you take liposomal glutathione, it tends to go to the immediate cells right around it, so the gut lining and the esophagus and that. It doesn't get much farther than that. An actual reduced form of glutathione can go in and go everywhere in the body and start taking care of it. Glutathione is kind of your anti-rust agent or your trash man. It goes into the cells, it cleans out the old debris. So when we're talking about spike protein particles being left around, they tend to oxidize. Glutathione is a great one for that. The vitamin C, vitamin E, they work well. They work well together. I will say most people, most of the time, are taking too much vitamin C. What happens if you get too much vitamin C? You tend to thicken up the lymphatic system. It makes mucus. That's why it helps you fight off viruses and things. It makes the mucus in your nose thicker. It makes the mucus in your lungs, so it catches the viruses, so you can cough them out, spit them out. So vitamin C, before this stage, doesn't work well. Alpha-lipoic acid is another trash man that helps take things. Resveratrol, polyphenols, both those are another ones that are trash men. So everything over here kind of helps you get rid of trash. The only one that I would put in early on is glutathione. The rest of them have to wait until you're in that phase. Optimizing health. So once you get to this phase, we've cleaned out the system. We've gotten the immune system out of fire, basically working properly. We've gotten the energy coming back. Now we just need a support system. So that adrenal system has been running on high. Your mitochondria haven't been able to produce energy, so you've been running off adrenals. Usually because you're doing caffeine, you're doing things to make it run. That's the other catch is individuals will come in and support adrenals right off the bat. They'll say, okay, we got to support adrenals. That just makes more debris in the lymphatic system than that. If you don't come in and take care of the lymphatic system first, we have a problem there. Certain individuals have to have liposomal Bs. We use a liposomal B at this stage to help out individuals. Sometimes if you throw in liposomal B too fast, we'll have some sleep disturbances and things. And then we want to just reestablish that cortisol curve. Thyroid, sometimes on some individuals, if the thyroid is not functioning at all, we have to come in and address it first. But really, we find this out in that reveal phase. We find out that the thyroid is depleted, sometimes as simple as getting vitamin D. If you do not have vitamin D, your thyroid cannot function properly. It's an impossibility for your thyroid to function properly. That's why we like seeing those vitamin D levels or giving people vitamin D. If you have an antibody, we come in and try to calm down the antibody, doing food sensitivity and that thyroid AB quench. And then we address the immune system, the autoimmune component. A lot of times this is when it's on fire. We've already addressed that usually up in the third phase there. And then the sleep, this is really where we start paying more attention to sleep and that lymphatics and cleaning out the brain. If you try to clean out the brain and the lymphatics right off the bat, a lot of times you will see individuals get sicker because they will pull debris out of the brain itself. It gets in the lymphatic fluid or the lymphatic fluid there, and it just plugs into another place. So maybe you went from having brain fog to complete exhaustion and that kind of thing. So we have to get that gets cleaned out and sleep gets restored later on in the process. And then at that point, like I said, you can repair things. We can come in and repair vascular repair. We use some things. K2 is a classic for cleaning out plaquing inside the arteries. The catch is if you start coming in and cleaning out plaquing when the lymphatic system's still clogged up, you tend to get bigger clots in places and bigger atherosclerosis in there. We take care of any microclots that are in there with nattokinase. We support the cardiovascular system, the gut system, the neurological system, and respiratory repair. Respiratory repair is an interesting one. It's a use it or lose it situation. If you're not breathing deeply, and I think most anybody who's been a patient at some point, I've probably given you a flyer of how to breathe deep. That's significant. If you're not breathing deep, you're building up toxins in your lungs. Your heart needs to have that lung going all the way down, breathing all the way down. If not, basically it shows you have more pressure in there, and it's going to increase your blood pressure to get flow into the lungs. So breathing deep and respiratory repair is important. We also use that product called pneumotrophin. Pneumotrophin PMG is cow lung. And cows can go out and be in the pasture all day and have hay up their nose and dust up their nose and all that. And you rarely ever hear a cow cough unless they have brucellosis or they have a parasite. But just from the dust out there, we go out and do the same thing and we're coughing and hacking. They have a higher ratio of less than sphingomyelin. And so if somebody came into my office and they have any kind of breathing problems, we put them on that pneumotrophin, which is desiccated cow lung. It works well. And then this is what do you do to basically repair your body for the long haul. You stay hydrated, you movement, and we're going to get to that here in a second. Usually just take a multi-mineral, multivitamin there. Keep the lymphatics moving. That saunas work out well for that. Activity works out. Restorative sleep. We got to make sure that you get sleep along the way. And then monthly or so, methyl balance cycle. So sometimes we will actually give you more methyl B12s to help clean up things and help move it along. We got to be careful doing too heavy of that because you'll get anxiety. And so a lot of times I'll do that probably about every other month. I'll do it to kind of build back up my methyl groups and to have more energy. The IR Omega, that's that one that I talk about, doesn't hurt sugars and everything. We tend to do that every so often. And then we track symptoms, watch that heart rate variability. And then quarterly, we retest, we adjust any protocols that need to be done, and we just check in. This is, I didn't know where to put this at in this whole talk because it's actually really important, and half of you have already slept a little bit in here since we've been here. But now, this is when I need you to wake up. ACE2, we can regulate the immune system. We can do all the things we just went through in the MILA protocol. ACE2, right now, the most effective way to regenerate ACE2 is increasing your activity, moving your body. When you move your body, there's two separate things that happen. You basically end up creating more mitochondria, which help make you make more energy, but you also make more ACE2. You put more ACE2 on the outside of those receptors. The story goes that when we caught COVID in my household, it was Thanksgiving of 2020, and Jennifer and the Casper and Sadie, my two kids, got COVID first. And they were sick, they were laying in bed. I was still trying to get things done, and so I was moving around, taking care of groceries, taking care of everything in the house, doing my paperwork. And I remember I went in to sit on the toilet, and I sat down, and all of a sudden it hit me like a ton of bricks. Every bone in my body hurt. I was so tired, I just thought, man, I'm gonna pass out. I got up and I started doing a stroke check in the mirror. I was thinking, am I stroking? I was looking, blinking, checking out. I was like, I'm not stroking out. I don't know what's the matter. I couldn't hardly stand on my feet. So I went in and I ended up laying down for like the next day, day and a half, and I got tested. I was definitely positive, but I laid around. And at one point, it was probably day 3, I decided if I was gonna die, I wasn't gonna die laying around. I was gonna get up and get moving. So I walked down to the end of the block, and we were living outside of St. Louis, and at that time, once you were tested positive, they had you locked down in quarantine. You couldn't leave your house or anything like that. And so I decided I was gonna walk to the end of the block. I walked to the end of the block, and by the time I got back to the house, I felt 1,000 times better. And I came in and I told my wife, Jennifer, I said, you need to get up and get moving. She goes, I don't feel good. I said, get up and get moving. And I said, I tell you what, walk to the end of the block. If you can't make it back up to the house, I'll come pick you up. She walked to the end of the block, and I didn't hear anything from her, And finally I got worried. I called her, and she goes, oh no, I've already walked like 2 miles. She goes, the more I walk, the better I feel. And that's because you start activating ACE2 is what you do. And it changes the world. It changes the way your body responds to it. I have a brother who got it and kept working, didn't have any problems. He said, yeah, it wasn't a really big deal, I was just tired. His wife laid in bed, and after a week or so, they decided that they were going to take her to the hospital. She got up, got going, got everything ready to go. On the way to the hospital, she's like, you know, actually, I'm feeling really good now. So it's because you activate ACE2. The catch is, you don't feel good. And you have long haul COVID, your ACE2's dropped, your mitochondria aren't working right. But the worst thing you can do is kind of start getting in the pity party and not doing stuff. The second worst thing you can do is decide that you're going to go push it really, really hard and get through it. You got to find the common ground somewhere in between. And so that green line is looking at heart rate stability. We're basically looking at the point to where you can get up, you can get moving, and you're not going to pass out, you're not going to do things. That's the first stage. We want to get up and just get moving. I know individuals, I know family members who have long haul COVID and who have lost their jobs, staying at home. They're not cooking meals anymore. They're basically being served hand and foot and that kind of thing. And the best thing that would ever happen is to start getting minimal activity. Getting up, cooking your own meals, maybe dusting the house, doing it. I didn't say vacuuming, just getting up small, doing small things. And you know what? Maybe the next day you're tired and you do something. You do something. It isn't getting up and doing nothing, it's still doing something. And then hopefully a week from now, you can vacuum the floors. And then maybe the week after that, maybe you can go for a little walk just down the street. And you keep doing it. Maybe you're a person who's already past that stage. You said, yeah, I was there, and I'm keep moving. I didn't have a choice. I have to take care of the kids. I have to take care of my spouse, and life is going on. You're now getting up in that yellow zone. And that yellow zone, what we want to do is keep making the green zone bigger and bigger and bigger, and the yellow and the red's getting smaller is what we want. But one of the ways you can do this is you can look at your maximum heart rate threshold. Your threshold is if you look at your heart rate when you're resting and you just take your heart rate and you add 15 beats to it. If you're monitoring, a lot of people have iWatches, a lot of people have that, but you can even stop and just take your pulse. That green zone is when you're operating within that 15 beats higher than you're resting. Now, hopefully as we go along, that green zone gets bigger and we come over here. If you're a person who's overdoing it right now, you may have to back down. Most people with truly long haul COVID, if you actually look at their lives, they're doing everything they can to avoid work, truthfully. I mean, you don't feel good. It's a natural thing. It's a real thing. So you want to keep adding to it slowly. What I find with my long haul COVID patients, they are in the green zone most of the time. But then something happens. Their kids want to do something. They want to go on a trip with the ladies. They have something big going on, and they go all the way to the red zone. And then they crash, and they're down for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks because they can't get back up. You basically created a whole deficiency of ACE2, and you can't get there. So building that up over time is important. Using the heart rate monitors can actually be a good thing in this situation, that you can kind of see what you're doing. You can tell when I crash out, oh, when I get up here, I crash out. But I think you have to start moving. Number one thing I could tell any long haul COVID patient is get moving, do it slowly, and build up over time. And so we're not looking at, this is not a week, this is not a month. This is probably not even 3 months. This is a year journey. You may be down at the very little part for a month. You may be there for 2. But I think of my friend Gerald, the old man that said he was 55 years old and in the worst shape of his life. And at 87, he was in incredible shape. If you take a lot of long-haul COVID individuals, they're getting in worse shape every day, and you can change it. Is it easy? No. Does it feel good? No. But over time, you're going to get healthy. So this is the 70 rule. Use only 70% of what you think you can do. So when we're talking about exercising and pacing yourself, it's going to seem too little. I've been an athlete in the past, and I'll get to times where I'm out of the gym. Like right now, I've been busy writing and doing presentations and things. I'm out of the gym. When I go back in, I always hit it too hard. I go back in at like 90% of what I was doing before and thinking I'm okay. Go in at about 70%. So 70% seems too easy for most people. That's an important thing there. The activity-wise, most individuals don't realize it, but when you do something really hard, you really feel it 2 days later. You may feel it that night, you may feel it the next day, but the true aftermath is about 2 days later. And that's why if you come in and you work at that 70%, but you actually go up to 80%, pay attention, because you're going to know that 2 days later that you overdid it. And you may have to take it easy after that. The other thing is, change one thing at a time. That's significant, especially with long-haul COVID. I was talking before I began with an individual, and I said, my problem with long-haul COVID patients is I have good success when they're not on the internet and not doing their own thing. What happens is we start out in that phase 2. So we reveal the problem, we get in, we're starting to do the elimination, and it takes about 8 weeks to really get through that elimination. And in about 2 weeks, they'll say, well, I saw this online. I think this is mast cell. I say, yeah, I agree with it. Mast cell. Well, I'm going to take this supplement, this supplement, this supplement here, and I need to do this here. Well, my job is to provide you with information. I can say, well, I wouldn't do that, stay with what you're at, but I'm not going to argue with you either. My job is to educate you as a patient, to give you the best knowledge out there, and to kind of give you the path. I can't lead you to water and make you drink it. I can lead you to where the water is. I can tell you where it is. But that's probably my biggest problem with long-haul COVID patients is I know they don't feel good. They're always searching for the next big thing to change and to do it, and usually they're too fast to keep changing. Change one thing at a time, stay with it, do the next thing, start getting your body moving. I put this note at the bottom, aggressive rest. If you notice, it's pretty small down there. Resting is important. So I'm telling you to move, I'm telling you to do things. You have to rest too. I think that's significant. So a lot of people will go out and just overdo it, and then crash. You need to slowly build up things, but you got to get the rest too. Proper sleep is important. Path forward, basically doing that foundation of drainage takes about 2 months. So long-haul COVID is not a quick fix. I wish it was. Like I said, I'd be rich if it was a quick fix. I'd have it figured out. Basically, that 3 to 4, we start seeing symptoms reduce. We start seeing the energy begin to come back. At 5 to 8 months, we start seeing a real improvement in there. Daily function starting to come back. And then out there at about a year, most people, they will be doing good 90% of the time. Maybe they catch a cold, they do something overexert, and they're tired, but it's nothing like what it was the year before. It's a gradual thing, and you'll have a situation where you're getting better, you fall. You come up, getting better, fall. But that line should keep increasing as far as energy, just how you feel, and livelihood. I think long-haul COVID has probably played a thing where most people just think they're getting old. You shouldn't be old at 55, 60, I always say you got to be 80 to be my friend, because that's when I consider you old. And at that time, your give-a-damn's gotten busted, and you'll tell the truth, and you'll do what's supposed to be done. So I don't consider you old until 80, and then I respectfully call you old. So practices that support ACE2, hydration. So that lymphatic system that we talk about being so critical, so important, it is highly dependent on water. Not tea, not coffee, things like that, but water. Moving is extremely important. That lymphatic system has to pump fluid by motion. It doesn't have its own pump. So again, if we're talking about it being one of the most critical things to work on first and you're not moving, you're going to have a lymphatic issue, without a doubt. Need to move lymphatics. Eat to Restore. If I didn't say about my book again, I'd get yelled at when I got back to the office. So get the Eat to Restore book if you haven't. It's a great way to, if nothing else, even if you don't listen to a word I say, at least you have the knowledge to know what's good and how much food you should have and what you should have and when you should have it. Sleep. So many people have a problem with sleep. Part of it's long haul COVID. Part of it is we're sitting there on our iPads and our iPhones and our computers and everything till too late at nighttime, worrying about what's going on with the kids in Iran and things like that, where we need sleep. And then downregulate stress. Again, probably half our stress now comes from social media stuff, either comparing ourselves with it or worrying about something. I love to read old trappers' journals, is what I like, and even ones where they talk about Coulter out here and Williams and Bridger and all those guys. They had no clue what was going on the whole year long until they got back to the rendezvous once a year, and they kind of get the papers and everything, they'd swap them around. But they were being shot at by Indians, bears were attacking them, wolves were attacking them, worried about freezing to death, and they were a lot healthier guys than we were. Most of them actually died of pneumonia when they went back to retire in St. Louis, is what happened to a lot of the guys there. But truth is, we're watching social media and knowing what's going on instantaneously, and we have more problems with it. We're worried about everybody else's problems. If you truly stopped worrying about everybody else's problems and took care of yourself, you probably would have a lot less stress. I got to stop worrying about my patients. I've written these 2 books. I think they're good books. Eat to Restore is a really good one for this talk. A lot of individuals are out there right now looking at hormone therapy as the fix. When we talk about long-haul COVID, it sounds like a great thing to go for hormones because, it's going to boost your energy, it's going to take care of you, and it will for a month, maybe 2 if you're lucky, and then you don't see it. There are reasons why the hormones are imbalanced. Long-haul COVID's one of them. Vitamin D is another one, omega-3s, and then we're just filled with toxins because we're eating the wrong junk. So that's a good book too. Other places you can go. I was telling Autumn before I started talking today, I think on our videos online now from these classes I've done, I think there's over 24 hours worth of me sitting up here talking. So if you haven't had too much of it already, there's topics on there that you may enjoy seeing on our video library. You just go to the Legacy Clinic and at top there's video library, click on it, it gets you there. A lot of individuals with long haul COVID, it happens. I've seen it happen in this town. They get engrossed into all they can talk about is how they feel. When you have long haul COVID, if you go and help other people, whether it be through your church, whether it be with some group organization, whether it be your family, you're going to get moving, you're going to get doing things, and you're also going to stop thinking about yourself. I had an individual in my life before that was not feeling good all the time, and they talk about how they didn't feel good. They came and worked in the office for several months, and what they found out is they think, man, I don't feel as bad as I thought I did because there's other people sicker than me, and their symptoms changed drastically. And so helping others is good there. Share this seminar with them. It'll do good for both of you. Stay connected. I'm building out Restore Mila. I don't have enough hours in my day. I'm working on multiple things. I'm writing books. I'm doing these presentations. I'm taking care of patients. I'm probably spending 100 hours a week in taking care of patients. Most people don't realize it. When you come to see me, we do the initial exam. In between that time and when you see me, I'm spending hours and hours going over all the data I got for you to give you a good plan. So stay educated yourself. We'll come up with that plan. We'll show you soon what's going on there.